Ben, undoubtedly she's shone a light on her own sport, but she's also, if you like, opened up a bit of a can of worms as well, because she says she's been left shocked by a lack of drugs testing. She's been tested once since she turned pro last year. This comes at a time that in the men's fight game, Dillian White, Hellenius, and then in the women's fight game, Baumgartner, but back with the men's, Conor Benn, all returned tests with adverse analytical findings. Why has she only been tested once?
Look, clearly there is a drug problem in the sport. I think everyone can agree that testing there's a complete lack of testing in the sport. There's a complete lack of regular testing and frequent testing. The problem I have with it all is we can only have one testing authority. We have to have a strong independent body in this country that governs the sport. And the point is, they aren't resourced well enough to actually test the fighters. This is a major sport now. This is a sport that is invested in by 3 major broadcasters in this country, yet the governing authority doesn't have the resources required to test these elite athletes. That's the biggest problem here.
Who should pay for it?
But it should be the promoters, but the broadcasters. The board should be receiving appropriate funding to be able to do that. There's a lot of money in the sport. Appropriate funding needs to go to the board to be able to do that. The worst thing that can happen is the promoters become the governing authority and promoters take it into their own hands. We are speaking to the board at the moment. We think we can make a few changes in the next 2 or 3 months alone to make sure that they have more resource, to make sure that UCAD can test regularly, because they're the ones that can do something about it. The worst thing is a fighter failing a test and no one knows, that you get jurisdiction problems. No one knows how to deal with it. It causes absolute chaos, and it brings the sport into disrepute. And
you're shaking your head, Simon, right?
No, I'm agreeing.
Agreeing?
We all know that the UCAD testing regime is not fit for purpose for the sport of boxing.
But testing is only done.
Resource.
But testing is only done, by the way, when you get to that level where you're boxing for titles, etc., etc. Caroline Dubois, she's only been tested once because she's been boxing, over 4 rounds, over 6 rounds.
The cost implications of testing and the reality of it is that you're never going to be able to test all the fighters at all levels on a regular basis because it would be
but why was she regularly tested as an amateur fighter?
It is cost.
That's what she said.
It is cost. You're talking about every test costing about £500, and so when you've got thousands and thousands of boxers that potentially need to be tested to really stamp it out multiple times a week, no one can do that. No one can afford to do that. What is clear is that the fighters at the top level, even at the top level, aren't being tested enough, which is what has caused the chaos of other testing authorities and other businesses, really private businesses, saying, you know what, we're gonna take this on and we're gonna make money. Whether it's VADA, they started because of a lack of testing,
and then it becomes a messy blame game.
Messy situation.
I mean, you've stuck to your guns, Simon, with a very strong principle about the aftermath of the Conor Benn situation, and you have not budged on that.
Because you can't really, can you? Because you can't overcome a failed drugs test by citing jurisdiction. And that is why I made the comment about Benn's fight recently, not condoning that there shouldn't be VADA testing, but suggesting that the reasons why I wouldn't be that bothered about VADA testing is because Conor Benn's legal team have just overturned the jurisdiction of VADA testing and shown that UCAD, because we all know that VADA testing doesn't have an outcome attached to it. It just has a reporting process. And so with that in mind, the idea that VADA testing, which is the gold standard for testing, which most people accept and perhaps does more than the current UCAD testing regime does, but is very, very expensive, and it won't fit into the current economic model of boxing unless they're going to change this economic model, and broadcasters will have to come to the table. Otherwise, they'll start losing events. What do they want? Do they want to lose a big event because a fighter tests positive on the eve of that fight? Or do they want to be able to prepare for not having those situations by having more investment in place that stops people from doing the thing in the first place?
Sure.